talk about anxiety. What is anxiety? Why does it happen? And where does it come from? First and foremost, it's really important to understand that we all have anxiety to some extent. It's when it becomes debilitating or consumes everything in our lives and shuts down the whole family unit that it becomes more disordered. And we really truly need anxiety. Anxiety is our response to real or perceived danger. A lot of different things happen in our brain and our body when we are feeling anxious. The reason that we need anxiety is because it keeps us safe. You know, when you think of anxiety like our internal alarm system, it cues us into danger. Sometimes that's real danger, and with anxiety, sometimes that's perceived danger. Some of us experience anxiety more intensely. Our body becomes more dysregulated, and that's when it becomes a more disordered pattern of thinking. This is where it can take over the entire family unit and become really debilitating for the child and for you as a parent, because it's hard to know what step do I take to not make this worse. We all need anxiety because it keeps us safe. If you think back to the time of cavemen, and you walked out of a cave to go hunting for the day, if you didn't have any anxiety or that internal alarm system, you might just wander about freely through the fields, not paying attention to whether or not there was a saber-toothed tiger lurking in the woods ready to pounce. You may not notice that huge storm cloud up above that could produce lightning and thunder or freezing rain and end up ending your life. So there is a level of anxiety that we need because it helps us cue into what is dangerous and what needs to keep us safe. If we didn't have it, we might just go out and cross a busy road without looking both ways. It's when it becomes something that is perceived danger, let's say answering a question in front of a class, or starting in a new grade, or going to a birthday party. In these moments of extreme anxiety that are out of proportion to the experience itself, for example, going to a new classroom, meeting a new friend, starting in a new school, having parents go out to dinner for the night, things of that nature. It's when it becomes those extreme reactions that we need to look at that pattern of behaviors and say, okay, what can I do about this? Because this is no longer serving you or helping you, it's actually harming you. There are a couple of different parts of the brain that are truly responsible for anxiety and what's going on when the sympathetic nervous system, or our fight, flight, or freeze response, is activated. One part of the brain, the really big part here, is the amygdala. The amygdala is this tiny almond-shaped, double almond-shaped part of our brain that's kind of located in the back center. It's also known as the lizard brain, if you will, because it's not as sophisticated as the rest of our brain. It has one job and one job only, and that job is to keep you safe. When it gets a message of danger, it responds. It does not stop to evaluate whether or not that danger is real. It does not stop to say, this is just a classroom that I've been to many, many times. I have no reason to fear. It says, I got a message that there's danger and I am going to respond. And in that response, it releases a bunch of different hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, serotonin, all of those hormones flood through the body to help protect you. It sends extra blood to all of the vital organs and away from extremities like hands and feet to help make sure that you are prepped for survival. That's why sometimes people might notice that their hands get really cold or their feet get really icy when they're feeling anxious. All of that serotonin floods through our body, which, if you didn't know, there are way more serotonin receptors in the intestine than there are in the brain. And so what that means when we're anxious and all of the serotonin is coming through, our stomach can flip and churn. Our colon can kind of contract over and over again, causing waves and butterflies and nausea. All of these different things, including speeding up our heart rate, our pupils dilate so that we can see in the dark. These things happen to help prepare our body for fight or flight, or occasionally freeze. The other part of the brain that is involved in this process is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for rational decision making. When we get anxious, just like blood is flowing more so to the vital organs than to, let's say, our extremities, all of the blood is kind of pulsating over to the amygdala and not the prefrontal cortex, not the part of our brain here that is responsible for rational decision making. Essentially, in essence, that part of your brain goes offline. It turns itself off because it's not needed in that moment. The only thing needed in that moment is something that can help you survive the danger. So when your child is feeling anxious and you try to calm them down with words, that's why it doesn't really feel effective, because they're not really hearing you, because the only thing really operating at that moment is their amygdala. So keep that in mind. We've got the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex. When we're feeling anxious, all of the blood kind of flows over here to the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex goes offline. And so we really need to, in those moments, help our child on re-regulating their body, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest response.